for me.
I bought a van. That's the van that I bought.
Drifting on by, you know how I feel.
June 6th, 2016 marks the day that I gave some sucker 2,000 pieces of paper for this Chevy 1994 G20 Gladiator Edition that I named Gladys, that is my home. She came fully loaded, one might say like a baked potato, with the fully functioning wheelchair lift and 65,000 miles. I camped around New England in practically just a metal box with a mattress and a cooler. This is Alex. Can you see it? There he is. There he is. He's got a bed right there. I've got my bed over here. And then, yeah, there's the lift. And then in August, I took her back to Kansas and I built out the inside. This is how that went. Today is day one of my fan build. Today, the only goal is just to strip everything out of it, get it all completely gutted. I'm gonna need help getting the wheelchair lift out. My friend Lindsey's been helping me for like the past 2 hours and we got the wheelchair lift out. That is all of the garbage. With the help of Waboosh and Lindsey, we installed a subfloor. Boom, there we go. We got in the floor. Subfloor is in completely. I framed the walls with 2x2s. That was confusing. It's not perfectly square, but neither is the van. I insulated with R13 fiberglass. We had it in the basement, and so it's free. So that's what I'm gonna use on the walls. I then installed laminate flooring for one of the walls. Even close. Boom, much better. I have to take all that off. Laminate apparently expands and contracts, and as soon as I get into cold weather, it's gonna contract and pull itself off the wall basically. And so instead of having to replace it in 6 months, I should just take it down now. Instead, chose to install cedar paneling. What did I say, 27? We kind of insulated the ceiling and then installed a piece of plywood for the ceiling. I bought the wrong size swivel seat and installed it anyway. The base of the seat is wider than the swivel. That's how I fixed it. 2 straps, 2 holes, 2 bolts, and then the same thing back there. I had to cut it off with a Sawzall in order to be able to swivel around that. It was getting stuck on it, but I fixed it. So 4 straps, 4 bolts, 4 nuts, and a lot of washers. I built a bed frame. Yeah, well, I mean, I'll sleep like this.
Gosh.
Installed a Max fan, not to be confused with a Fantastic fan, because the Max fan is better. I went down to the basement and I started working on my floor. My solar panels just got here. Got the charge controller, I got the cables, the brackets, the panels, the fan is installed, and I got solar panels, and in a few days I'll have power, because I don't have the batteries yet, but these are getting installed today. Got that 200 watt solar system and a 200 amp hour battery bank going on. I struggled to build a cabinet. It's not the prettiest cabinet in the world, but I made it. And it's in my van. I built another one that was definitely better. That is getting that put on it and it's gonna go over that. And that'll be my countertop.
This is not the proper way to make cabinets, I guess, but
I made Lindsey do the staining. Thank you for doing that, Lindsey. I installed a spalted maple counter. I shredded foam for the cushions. That was fun.
Sweet, dude.
And it was done.
So this is the great unveil.
Dun, dun, dun.
There it is.
That looks sweet. It's my floor. From gutting to on the road was about 35 days, August 3rd to September 6th. I did not work every single day. So now it's been pretty close to a year since I bought Gladys. We've been on the road. We've literally gone coast to coast, and now we're headed up to Alaska. Gladys is by no means perfect, but she is my home and I did build her, and so I love her. I have considered driving her off a cliff before, but I didn't do it. That's what actually matters. Anyway, I'm working on adding some additions to Gladys, like something like a light bar, and I also wanted to change the fridge situation. And since we're talking about the fridge, I should probably tell you about that situation. That's a freezer because it has more insulation, and there's a relay that runs the inverter because there's a temperature probe inside of the freezer, and that keeps it at refrigerator temperature. Doing it this way, it's pretty efficient, but it's way cheaper than buying a DC compressor fridge. This way is about $230 opposed to like $600 plus for a DC compressor fridge. A downside is since it's side loading, every time you open it, it cycles on because all the cold air falls out. So what I want to do is I want to get rid of the box and possibly put like a DC compressor fridge, or at least some sort of fridge that is top loading in that space. And then where the fridge is now, I would remove that obviously and turn that into a cabinet, and then I could move all my food that is in that box into the cabinet, and that would free up all of that space and it'd be like a lot nicer. That's what I want to do, but obviously I haven't done that yet. I have 1 gallon of propane for cooking, and that lasts me about 3 months. And then I can carry 7.5 gallons of water, and I can go completely off grid for a week without having to resupply. I average about 16 miles a gallon depending on the terrain. Under the bed is all sorts of storage. That there is my pee bottle. I can't stand in here, so I have these towels that I kneel on. I also have 2 anchor points where I can set up a hammock in here, and recently I've been sleeping in the hammock and I have been enjoying it because I want to redo the cushion situation because those are lumpy. Whenever I built this van, I was pretty tight on cash, and so I did everything as cheap as possible, hence the lumpy cushions. I bathe whenever I can, and sometimes that ends up being in a river, and toilets are actually surprisingly super easy to find. They're everywhere. We live in a land full of toilets. Seriously though, there's an absurd amount of toilets, I think, sometimes. The build cost me about 3.5 grand, and almost all of that went on credit. And that's just reality, that is not advice. The van, the build, and any mechanical fixes have cost me about $7,000. So 7 grand for a home on wheels, and I don't pay rent. I think that's pretty reasonable. I really think that this lifestyle, the van life lifestyle, is the most attainable as far as like whatever's put on the internet and is super attractive. I think van life is definitely the most attainable. It's super affordable once you get into the van, and after you have the build, the expenses are like nothing. You have no rent. But van life is totally not for everybody. The road can be a hard place sometimes, and it can get pretty lonely, but it's allowed me to create the life that I want to live, and I know for many others that's what it's allowed them. It allows you a freedom that you wouldn't have living in a conventional housing unit. There's no leases, you own the van outright, you can go where you want, you can stay where you want, you don't have a reoccurring payment. There's just so many benefits to living in a vehicle or just living smaller. To live in a van, you totally need like a level of resilience and a pretty high tolerance for like being uncomfortable, because I can't even stand up in my house. Like that's a thing that I have to deal with every single day, and that's not the best thing. Like there are totally some downsides to living in a van, but the upsides that it offers me personally are totally worth it. Without my van and without this channel, I have no idea what I would be doing with my life, but I don't think I would be enjoying it as much as I do now. Be sure to follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Dylan Magaster. I will be doing a Q&A here in the near future that will be announced on Instagram and Twitter. So if you have questions that you would like to ask, be sure to follow me on those 2 platforms. Plus, I'm just trying to get the numbers up because they're pretty weak over there, if you know what I'm saying. Together, we've made it to over 100,000 subscribers. That is quite rad. So welcome, everybody. I'm Dylan Magaster. For those of you that don't know, welcome to the family, and let's get to 1 million, eh? Why'd I say A? Am I Canadian? Eh?